Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is where you are from. My name is Kathy, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of British Columbia. I'm one of the volunteers for CSPC, and I am so excited to welcome you to the CSPC 2024 pre-conference short talk session. Today, I have the privilege of calling from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I encourage you to learn more about whatever native territories you are based on today. This is a part of the CSPC 2024 conference, and today we will be featuring 6 short talks from a range of interesting subjects and accomplished speakers. Each talk will be 8 minutes of presentation, followed by 2 minutes of questions. Please submit your questions through the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we encourage you to upvote preferred questions because that's what we'll be asking at the end. Before we begin, CSPC would like to launch a demographic poll. To kick us off today will be Dia Kamar. Dia is an undergraduate student in the biomedical science program at the University of Saskatchewan. Welcome, Dia.
Hi, can you hear me? Just confirming.
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my short talk, and I will just share my slides with you right now. And I hope my slide is visible enough.
They look great.
Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Dia Kamar, and I'm a third-year undergraduate student studying biomedical science from University of Saskatchewan. Firstly, thank you to the organizers of Canadian Science Policy Center Conference this year for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak about something that's very close to my heart, how science, AI, and policy intersect, and why it's essential to bring young voices in these conversations, and hence the title. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, an undergrad in policy, isn't that something for people with years of experience? And I would say, yeah, that's a fair question. Actually, my interest started when I ran for the student council elections at my university for the position of vice president of academic affairs. Although I lost just by few votes, but that run actually introduced me to the world of policies and the huge gap in youth representation. The experience stuck with me, and in few months, I was chosen as the vice chair of AI in Saskatchewan Student Network. And since then, I have been focused on programs and events related to AI, but more importantly, on stuff like AI ethics and representing youth perspectives on a provincial level. During this journey, I noticed how often young people are actually missing from policy discussions, even though we are among those most impacted by artificial intelligence. So, I decided to do something about it, and I have developed a framework, a sort of a blueprint to show how Canada could bring meaningful youth involvement in AI policy. Now, Canada has always been forward thinking in policy, known globally for its commitment to inclusivity, ethics, and leadership in areas like healthcare, climate, and AI. Through the Pan Canadian AI strategy, backed by significant funding, Canada has created a robust AI ecosystem with over 850 companies and major players like Samsung and Microsoft setting up research labs over here. The Advisory Council on AI brings together top minds to guide policy, commercialization, and public awareness. But here's where I get a little personal. I went through every meeting summary from 2021 to 2023 of Canada's Advisory Council on AI, And I was thrilled to see how much thought goes into AI policy discussions. But honestly, I was really surprised that youth voices were not even mentioned. Now, we are not talking about involving some teenagers for the sake of it. We are actually talking about a demographic that is deeply immersed in this technology and who will be impacted by these policies in profound ways. And this isn't just a Canadian issue, it's something countries around the world are figuring out. But I believe Canada, with its progressive approach to youth engagement and policy innovation, is in a unique position to lead here too. Now, I get it. Policy doesn't sound the most exciting topic for a lot of people, but for me, it's quite literally the opposite. Since the more I learn about different policies, the more I get to know its impact when done right. So, after those late nights and going through pages and pages of different policies regarding AI and youth engagement around the globe, and let's just say a lot of coffee, I came up with something that I'm really excited to share to you, a Canadian made framework to bring youth voices meaningfully into AI policy. It's a plan that I think is not only meaningful and impactful, but also totally doable. And I'd like to share a few core ideas from this framework with you today. Now, step one, which involves a very important question: how do we actually bring youth voices directly into national AI policy discussions? To amplify youth perspectives at national level, we should create a youth advisory sub-council under the existing advisory council on artificial intelligence. This would be a team of young professionals, early career researchers, and students with strong understanding of AI. They would bring fresh insights and real world concerns, whether it's around digital privacy, job impacts, ethical standards, and whatnot. This youth sub council would meet quarterly with a main advisory AI council, ensuring that the voice are directly tied to policy development. Now, second important question comes: how do we make sure that the youth engagement in AI policy remains consistent regardless of the political changes? To ensure continuity, I propose adding a youth engagement clause to Canada's national AI policy mandate. This clause would make youth participation a required part of policy development, creating a long term commitment to including youth at every stage. Anchoring youth engagement in legislation ensures that our voices remain a part of AI policy even if the political priorities shift. Now, how do we involve young voices from diverse communities across Canada? To achieve this, my framework suggests building a local youth consultative council on AI in each province. These councils would provide valuable insights from urban centers, rural centers, and indigenous communities, ensuring that the national policy is informed by the diversity of Canada's youth. These councils could also use virtual town halls and social media, because let's be honest, we are talking about a demographic that is deeply invested in social media, so why not use it to to make participation even more inclusive and accessible. And finally, to ensure transparency and to show the real impact of youth contributions, I suggest including youth engagement matrix in AI Advisory Council's annual reports. This section would track how youth input has influenced, creating a clear line of accountability, which is really important, and demonstrating the values of young perspectives. The future of AI policy is too important to be crafted by a single homogeneous group. Involving young people, those who are most affected by these technologies and who are often at the forefront of actually understanding them, is essential. We have the passion, insight, and readiness to drive these discussions and bring meaningful, actionable change. When young people feel that they have a stake in AI policy, they are more likely to support and advocate for it. It creates a sense of ownership that goes beyond a policy on paper. Canada's achievements in AI are something to be proud of. Now let's just take the next step by inviting youth to the table to secure Canada's position as a leader in responsible and inclusive AI. Thank you so much for hearing me out today. And if you are interested in having more conversations related to this, I would be happy to connect with you via my email. And thank you so much, CSPC organizers, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dia, for your very passionate and comprehensive presentation on how youth can be involved in AI. We have two questions. One in the chat. Has there been any interests in the youth AI framework proposed? Do you have any interest from any government or academic agencies?
Thank you so much for this question. This framework, I just did a lot of research, gone through a lot of policies of Europe, the US, and it is just being made before a few months. So I am yet to propose this framework or even show it to any of the government officials. But I did show it to the elected members of our student council at my university, and they actually thought that it is pretty doable. So I am someone who actually needs the support here to show it to the government officials and actually the decision makers, because I feel that we have the intergenerational power over here. That I am someone who's really passionate and put forward this framework, but I don't have the actual decision making capacity. So if someone can help connect me with someone who would really see my vision over here, and yeah, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and it's an honor for us for you to share your ideas with us for the first time in a space like this. Next question is, how would youth be defined? What age range do you have in mind?
So Canada, every country defines youth in a very definitive way. For Canada, youth basically comes from around, I don't remember the exact age group, but they, because I read a lot of policies from Europe and US, so the numbers are kind of all around in my mind. But every country has a specific age group that they define youth under. So for Canada, it should be from 16 to from 16 to 29. If I'm not wrong, and I can be wrong. And even for me to involve youth, I feel that what Canada has suggested, uh, uh, youth under the category of those age group could be really passionate to put forward this policy and help it.
Great, thank you. While we wait for more questions to come in, I have a question for you. My question is, what is the single most important topic that you think that youth can have a unique perspective on, and that is currently being overlooked in discussions around AI?
Um, that's and actually that's a really good question. I feel that the thing that youth can actually really have interest in, and it's kind of overlooked in the AI discussion, should be how generative AI, for example, Chat GPT, can be used in benefits to their academics. Because right now we
Mm.
are seeing a lot of negativity revolving around Chat GPT, that it's not ethical to use AI. And I completely agree with that to a certain limit. But I feel that the more positively we start seeing generative AI and have those discussions in all at all levels, be it local level, be it at a national level, that would be really helpful. And that is something that I feel that it's generally being overlooked by a lot of people, and youth have a lot of stuff to say about that, and they are passionate to share their views on how generative AI can actually be useful towards their academics.
Perfect, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
don't see any more questions, so thank you so much, Dia, again for presenting and answering our questions.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dr. Roseanne Allion and Dr. Alison Secular. Dr. Allion is the Executive Director of Research, Innovation, and Translation at the Baycrest Academy for Research and Education. Dr. Sekuler is the President and Chief Scientist at the Baycrest Academy for Research and Education and the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So the world is aging faster now than it ever has in our history. And what that means is that there's going to be incredible changes in every aspect of our lives, from transportation to the workforce, to healthcare, to social interactions. Everything is going to be changing. And it's going to be changing even more because of dementia. I'm snapping my fingers about once every 3 seconds or so. And that's because once every 3 seconds, as you'll see in the next slide, someone somewhere in the world is being diagnosed with dementia. And right now, we already have a huge population of people with dementia, about 55 million people. And that number is expected to triple by about 2050. And in Canada alone, what that means is that we have about 350 people developing dementia every single day. Dementia is not just a normal part of aging. It's a complex syndrome that affects memory and thinking and judgment. And as cognitive decline progresses, it interferes with daily functioning, which makes it increasingly difficult for people to live independently. And then that leads to increased demand for care, increased need for training of caregivers, and increasing costs of care. And dementia currently costs the world about $1.3 trillion annually. And that's projected to grow to be about $3 trillion by the year 2030. And those expenses include healthcare costs, long-term care, financial toll on the families and caregivers. And it's really important to note that in many lower income countries, the burden on families and caregivers is going to be even greater because there are fewer supports and opportunities for skills training. So, of course, it's really important to mention that every single person who's being diagnosed with dementia, you also have accompanying that at least 1 to 3 informal caregivers being diagnosed as caregivers. So the impact really isn't being measured just in terms of dollars and cents. It's really in the quality of life as a whole. But as you'll see on the next slide, there is hope. And that's because the Lancet Commission report indicates that up to 45% of dementia cases are linked to modifiable risk factors like staying active and maintaining social connections, avoiding air pollution, and increasing education in childhood and throughout our lifetimes. And what that means is that the future of dementia is not inevitable. Roseanne, over to you.
So in alignment with Canada's National Dementia Strategy, we developed our Defy Dementia initiative, which aimed to engage persons with lived experience to curate, design, and disseminate multimodal resources with the aim of increasing public awareness and understanding of the modifiable risk factors of dementia, which directly aligns with one of the national objectives of the National Dementia Strategy. And in addition, we wanted to also reduce stigma associated with dementia. And as our results show, I think we managed to make a dent into the national objective. One of the innovative aspects of the Defy Dementia initiative was that we used a co-design and collaborative approach. As evidenced by the slide that you see on the screen, we engaged older adults, persons living with dementia, and their care partners in order to prioritize content topics and their learning needs. We took a co-design approach where we meaningfully engaged with these individuals through an iterative and adaptive approach, where we curated multimodal resources that are evidence-based, accessible, and culturally sensitive. And we engaged them again in how we disseminated those resources, recognizing that we needed to collaborate with individuals with lived experience in order to scale and disseminate and drive uptake of these resources. In addition, we partnered with national organizations to do the same. But then we also continuously refined our resources based on their feedback as well. So what do we mean by Defy Dementia? We are a multimodal package of resources that includes a Webby-nominated monthly podcast series, animated videos, infographics, a website and resources, as well as in-person and online community engagement events. We recognize that people don't always learn the same, so we take a multimodal learning approach. As we mentioned, this includes a podcast hosted by Allison Sekuler and Jay Ingram, where we cover a different risk factor every month. But we most importantly focus on the stories of individuals with lived experience, and we share the work of dementia experts from around the world. And most importantly, we provide actionable strategies for our end users to optimize their brain health, their aging journey, and reduce their risk of dementia.
So in addition to the podcast, as was mentioned, we try to summarize the information in different ways. And this is one example of a video, an animated video of one of the podcasts that we were focused on exercise.
Table tennis and weightlifting, to gardening and walking your dog. We know exercise is good for your body, but it might be a surprise, it's also good for your brain.
Exercise increases blood flow and creates new brain cells. That can improve memory, protect against dementia, and slow or even reverse cognitive decline. Exercise literally strengthens your brain.
Research shows that any movement is better than none. Everyone can find a way to exercise, no matter what your physical ability.
So exercise regularly and choose activities that bring you joy. As your body gets used to one exercise, challenge yourself with something new to maximize your brain benefits.
Every step counts because you're never too young or too old to exercise. Boost your brain health and decrease your dementia risk. So as Roseanne mentioned, some people really like podcasts, others prefer videos, and still others might prefer the form of an infographic. And we also have all of the information provided in both English and French, and we make it as easy to share as possible. So you can find out where all of the information is yourself at defydementia.org or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And when you go there, you'll also see links to all of the different sorts of resources that are out there. And we really believe that this kind of approach is going to be important for us in tackling the public health crisis that is dementia, which is going to have an impact on so many different aspects of our lives.
So what's been the impact of Defy Dementia to date? What you see are some of our metrics that we were really proud to share with today's audience. So as you see on the left, we've engaged nearly 600 persons with lived experience in the design and dissemination of our resources. Our Defy Dementia resources have been accessed over 325,000 times, and we've had a total reach of nearly 10.5 million individuals. The map in the middle shows that we've went coast to coast across Canada to engage with our communities around dementia prevention, all the way from Vancouver to Halifax and up north to Whitehorse. But we haven't only reached Canadians. We've also reached 42 additional countries, including most notably our top 5, the United States, Mexico, the UK, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Our audience, through online surveys and focus groups, have also indicated that they have really appreciated our variety of resources, the stories shared by our persons with lived experience, the design of the resources with a special shout out for our podcast hosts, including Allison, and the relevance of our content and holistic approach to dementia prevention. And most notably, our respondents have also indicated that they've already or plan to make healthy, positive behavior changes, including daily exercise, monitoring hearing, sleep, and a healthy diet. And they've also reported a more positive outlook towards dementia and more positive attitudes to persons living with dementia. We're excited to continue our Defy Dementia journey, so please join us at defydementia.org. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions and to our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Drs. Alyon and Sekuler. We have one question in the chat. I'm surprised dancing was not mentioned as the likely most beneficial physical and mental activity to slow cognitive decline, something to think about.
Yeah, we actually have a dancing program at Baycrest that we co-designed with the National Ballet School. And it's free for everybody. And CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, also has sponsored the creation of other dance programs, including at Hamilton Health Sciences, the Geros Dance Program and others. So it's certainly something that's really engaging. And when we do our live events
as Roseanne mentioned, we've gone coast to coast to coast. When we do our live events, we actually sometimes have dance breaks at those events where we have people, whether they're sitting in their chairs or they can stand. Everyone can take part in that, and it's a great activity, not just because it's a good way to get your body moving, but it can also be a social activity. It can also help you reminisce about your childhood if you have the right kind of music. So it's one of those sorts of activities where you can actually get multiple benefits coming into you from different directions, for sure.
Amazing. I love, and what struck out to me the most about this program throughout your presentation was this focus on so much diversity in your approaches and how actionable your approaches are. Another question is, how do you see the Defy Dementia program scaling and being sustained beyond this? Wonderful statistics and reach.
Yeah, we're currently working with some partners, both across Canada and internationally. I can't say who the partners are. One of the partners, if it goes through them, we would scale it sort of overnight by a factor of 10 at least. And so that's one of the kinds of things we're doing. But Roseanne, you want to add in some other notes on the scaling?
What I just wanted to mention is that we've already engaged with 64 national partners through our initial first year. And so I think that's one aspect. And when we go to our different events, we are always really cognizant to partner with local resources and local partners, recognizing that not everyone can come to Toronto. So we try to provide actionable resources and actionable partners and engagement with local partners, whether that be the local Alzheimer's Society, the YMCA, and others. So we recognize that scaling cannot necessarily be done by us alone, but through partnership. And I think that's one way that we hope to continue our Defy Dementia message across the country and internationally.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we've been working on is trying to find some funding to be able to translate the resources into more languages than just English and French. Even in Canada, a lot of our folks, have as their first language another language. So we have some applications in for that. And as you saw, I mean, if we could get the translations into Spanish and into Tagalog and other languages, given where our reach is already, that would help tremendously. I think the other thing, though, in terms of that spread and scale, is we need to be really mindful that it's not necessarily enough to just change the language. We may need to change the content as well, because if we're talking about having something in the Philippines, for example, the diet is going to be different, and the social activities and culture may be different. And so we need to make sure that it's culturally safe as well as linguistically accurate.
I love how comprehensively you guys are thinking about both the local aspect as well as the cultural aspect of and integrating those components with your fantastic resources.
Yeah, I would just say one last thing on that topic, because when we look at where the world is aging, it's getting older in general, but certain parts of the world, like Africa, are getting older even faster. So Africa will have 3 times the number of seniors, by 2050, where we'll have twice as many. And so, it's really important to be getting in early into some of these countries where we're going to be seeing those biggest effects of aging, to make sure that people are starting as early as they can to change their lifestyle so that they can reduce their risk of developing dementia, which will then help those countries sort of leapfrog over some of the challenges that other countries have had.
Yeah, great. That's fantastic. The focus on preventative health on a global scale. Wonderful. Right. Thank you both again so much for being here today and sharing with us your fantastic resource.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Next, we have Kaya Motter. Kaya is the head of academic affairs, North America at Springer Nature, where she leads academic affairs activities in the US and Canada. Welcome, Kaya.
Thank you. And just get my presentation up here. So thank you, Kathy, and thank you to all of the organizers for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. First, I wanted to start with a context for this discussion. And show some examples of the carrots and sticks that we're seeing that are motivating factors for researchers in sharing their research. Open access and open data mandates from funders and institutions certainly will play a big part and have a big impact, but we also shouldn't ignore some of the more philanthropic and professional motivations that drive researchers to share their work and to make it more accessible. Many institutions and funders are beginning to recognize a broader range of research artifacts to support responsible research assessment, but tools to monitor impact and dissemination still lag behind. For the past 9 years, as part of our State of Open Data survey, we have been asking researchers to tell us what motivates them to share their research. And the primary motivation has remained largely the same. Researchers want their work to be cited, and full data citation is also becoming a strong motivator. The survey also highlights more altruistic motivations, such as the societal impact of open data sharing. But challenges persist. A large majority of researchers still feel that they are not receiving sufficient credit for sharing their data. And if we can't find a way to consistently measure data metrics across platforms and repositories, this will remain a challenge. The data citation corpus, which launched in early 2024, contains over 5 million data citation records. And so this is a step in the right direction. And there are other efforts underway, but we still have a long way to go, and lack of recognition isn't the only barrier to participation. The theme of this year's CSPC meeting is centered on empowering society. And we recognize that open science can empower society, and it can give people the tools to help them make informed decisions about their individual health and well-being. But open science practices also help policymakers to solve global challenges on a larger scale. In preparation for this presentation, I took a closer look at survey results from Canada. And what we can see here is declining support for funder-driven data sharing mandates. And this has been taking place over the last 4 years. I don't have an explanation for this trend, unfortunately, but perhaps our survey results could help funders and policymakers to identify what motivates authors to make their research openly accessible and to use this data to inform policy development. So where do publishers fit into the open science and the open data sharing ecosystem? And how can we encourage the adoption of open science policies and practices? In my role at Springer Nature and as a company, we take a three-pronged approach, which is focused on policies, technological solutions, and editorial interventions that are designed to alleviate administrative burdens and barriers to participation. So let's start with policy. Too many buttons there. We were one of the first large-scale publishers to introduce a data sharing policy back in 2016. And about a year ago, we decided to move to a single level policy, which would require the publication of a data availability statement for all original research articles across our portfolio. The implementation of a standard policy for all journals and disciplines will help improve transparency, access to data, and compliance. And it will also introduce efficiencies that can help alleviate some of the administrative burden for both editors and authors. We also introduced a unified open policy for open code, which is very similar in many ways to our policy for open data. We are currently just over halfway through the implementation of our policy for data sharing, and it has been a massive effort to transition a portfolio of over 3,000 journals to a single unified policy. But we feel strongly that the end result will be a significant increase in the amount of data that is shared, is made accessible, and most importantly, is made citable. So let's move on to some of the technological innovations and workflow solutions that we've developed. For data, code, and preprints, we now offer integrations on some journals that automate and facilitate data deposition, code sharing, and preprinting at the time of submission. These solutions address one of the major barriers to participation, which is the submission process itself. They also provide a pathway to increased recognition and reward through the automated assignment of a DOI and linking to the final published article. Springer Nature's Protocol Exchange is currently migrating to Protocols.io, which means that we can also offer improved technological support there as well. Our Figshare integration was introduced in early 2022, and here you can see the impact of that integration on data sharing policies and practices across the Nature portfolio. Overall, repository use has increased from 42% to 62% post-implementation. So editorial expertise has always been at the heart of what we do as a publisher. But editorial intervention is an especially important component of our approach to open science. When the Nature journals introduced the data sharing requirement in 2016, the policy was flexible enough that authors could make their data available upon request. The result was that authors often took the path of least resistance and opted not to make their data immediately accessible. So the editors at Nature Ecology and Evolution began challenging authors to provide a reason for opting out. Why were they opting out? And this motivated an increasing number of authors to begin sharing their data. We recognized the impact of this intervention on author behavior, and the decision was made to apply this practice to more journals. You can see here that the result has been an overall decline in the percentage of content with no linked data. And now 75% of the journals in the sample are sharing data publicly. Editorial intervention and support from Code Ocean, the peer reviewers and the journal editors themselves has also been essential to the Code Ocean workflow. Our analysis of the pilot journals over the initial 5-month launch period was really encouraging. A significant percentage of the authors used the code sharing service, and at least 25% of the peer reviewers engaged with it over that time period. We will be releasing our new special report on the state of open data shortly. And this year's report takes a closer look at data sharing in practice using some of the new resources that have become available. So if you want to stay in touch about the release of that report, you're welcome to scan this barcode and check back to access the full report once it's available. or you can register to receive a copy of the report, and I'll put a link for you in the chat so that you can do that. And with that, I will stop and pause for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaya, for that very interesting presentation about a very important topic that not many people consider from the publisher's perspective. So it's exciting to see what you guys have been doing to promote open data sharing. I don't see any questions right now, so while we wait, I have a question for you. What reasons do authors cite for making data only available upon request based on the feedback you get from the submission form?
That's a good question. And I think it does probably vary a little bit from one discipline to the next. But I think there is still some lingering perceptions from some authors, fears of getting scooped, for example. And I think for others, there may be concerns about data privacy, although I think that is, or patient confidentiality, for example, in the medical profession. And I think also now, at least in this country, and I believe also in Canada, there are concerns about research security that might prevent authors from sharing certain data. And of course, people who are engaged with Indigenous research are sensitive to concerns about, privacy. And so there's a number of different things, I think, that could prevent or discourage authors from sharing data. But in many cases, there are solutions that can help mitigate some of those factors and allow researchers to share data in ways that protect privacy and confidentiality.
That's great to hear that there's this back and forth between researchers expressing concerns and publishers meeting those concerns with solutions to promote data sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any more questions. So thank you so much for being here with us today and presenting.
Thanks for having me.
Our next speaker is Dr. Jillian Banfield. Dr. Banfield is the lead for patient partnership in CIHR's Institute of Genetics. Welcome, Dr. Banfield.
Thanks, Kathy. I will share my screen here. So yes, as Kathy mentioned, I'm the lead for patient partnership at the Institute of Genetics, which is one of the 13 virtual institutes at the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. I'm also a patient partner myself, so I'm bringing lived experience of various health conditions as well as my professional experience to this work. And I want to tell you about how we've integrated patient partnership as a fundamental part of the work that we do at the Institute of Genetics. So that this might inspire folks at other institutions and organizations to potentially do similar work. So first, I want to start with sort of my fundamental belief that underpins what I do and what I bring to this work, which is that people deserve to have input on the decisions that affect them. And so in my context of being at the Institute of Genetics, which is ultimately a funder of health research, the way that we do this is by partnering with patients. So when I talk about patient partnership, what I mean is people who have lived experience of a health condition, bringing their expertise and their experience to health research in a way that's contributing ideas, solutions, and new ways of doing things than what we typically see from a simple academic approach to health research. And so this is not just people participating in research as participants. This is patients being equal members of research teams and contributing to health research in this way. So ultimately, patient partnership is a way that people can impact healthcare research. And so at the Institute of Genetics, I'll talk to you a little bit about how we do this work and thread it through everything that we're doing. So first of all, we try to involve patient partners throughout the entire life cycle of research grants. which I will sometimes call funding opportunities because that's the language we use in this space. We also have a real attention to diversity in patient partnership. There is research, unfortunately, showing that patient partners in Canada have a real lack of diversity in this group. So there's people with certain demographic backgrounds, usually those who have a lot of extra time on their hands or the resources to partner on research are those who are overrepresented in patient partnership. So we're trying to do what we can at the Institute of Genetics to make sure that we are finding more diversity in the patient partnership work that we do, which will ultimately improve research for everyone in Canada. And we also have a focus on evaluating and iterating on the work that we do, because patient partnership is a growing sort of field. We think there's some best practices out there, and we think there are things that we're doing that are actually pushing the needle on where patient partnership in healthcare research should be going. So we try to evaluate, iterate, and share our findings. So that's why I'm talking to you today about what we're doing. So to give you an overview of how you thread patient partnership through the whole life cycle of a grant or a research grant or research project, it really starts from the very beginning. So from the kernel of an idea, we want to be involving patient partners in that work. So we've actually adjusted some of our funding opportunities that we've offered based on input that we receive from patients about what their priorities are, what the unmet needs are, and what the gaps are in research. So patient partners are there at the very beginning, and we try to make sure that they carry through the entire life cycle. So this includes also in our funding opportunities, we often require that there be patient partners on a research team. So they need to be applicants to a grant opportunity. And so this means patient partners might be contributing to the research methods that and we also have been including patients on our peer review panels. So when grants come in to be evaluated, we are including patients as reviewers of those grants, just as we include other people with different types of expertise, whether it's a health economist or a microbiologist. We see all of these different types of expertise as complementary. So patient partners, they are reviewing grants, they're providing comments and scores, and then they participate on the peer review panel, and they discuss this with their colleagues around the table. So they're having real tangible impact on the kind of research that gets funded. Now, with respect to diversity, as I mentioned, there is unfortunately a lack of diversity, I would say, in patient partners in Canada, although I think we're seeing the tide start to change there. But we've been very intentional about this at the Institute of Genetics. So in this year, we launched a patient partner committee that works with the Institute of Genetics. It's 10 people from across the country. And when we were recruiting for this committee, we were very intentional in looking for as much diversity in demographic background, lived experience with healthcare research. And we have a really wonderful group of people who are bringing new ideas to us. Similarly, when we recruit for peer review or when we offer training opportunities or even inviting patient partners to speak at workshops, we're always looking at the diversity aspect of patient partnership to make sure that we're not simply inviting the same people over and over, giving new opportunities to different people as much as we can. Another tangible way that we're trying to increase the diversity in patient partnership is making sure that people know that we provide compensation to patient partners who work with us. This is not fully standard practice across the patient partnership and research space. So it's important that we have compensation guidelines that we use at the Institute of Genetics. And I've put a QR code if you want to scan it and look at what those look like. But it's to make clear that we believe that lived experience is a form of expertise, and that providing your expertise and your time should be compensated. This also makes sure that people who might have to take time off work or who have caregiving responsibilities or whatever it might be are not suffering a loss of income for participating or partnering on research. And then with respect to diversity as well, we try to meet people where they're at. So this means we are not expecting people to learn everything there is to know about healthcare research funding, because it's a lot. And we especially work in the space of rare disease, and sometimes managing a rare disease is a full-time job itself. So we don't want people to feel that they must take on certain training in order to be able to contribute to research. We see it as our responsibility to make it possible for people to contribute to research. And then we offer any sort of training opportunities that they might want to take on, but it's not a requirement. Now, with respect to evaluation, we do this when it's feasible, makes sense for the work that we're doing, and so that we can iterate on our own practice and share those findings with others at CIHR as well as with other organizations. So, for example, we recently had a suite of funding opportunities on rare disease, and they were all evaluated by patient peer reviewers. So we took that opportunity to evaluate the experience of patients who participated in peer review. So I interviewed everyone after their time serving on a peer review panel was done, and wrote a report to summarize their experiences. And so we're sharing that report around so that others at CIHR as well as other organizations can borrow from what we've learned and hopefully also improve their practice. We're also tracking metrics like compensation guideline downloads. So as I mentioned, we have these guidelines that we found they've been accessed thousands of times. So we know that outside of the work that we do at the Institute of Genetics, people are interested in having some guidance about how to compensate patient partners. So it's a way that we're contributing to the patient partnership space in general. And then in terms of more qualitative feedback, which I think is really important, about 6 months into our brand new patient partner committee, I did check-ins with each of our patient partners to see how things were going, what we might need to adjust. And then based on the feedback I received from them, we've changed some of our processes within that committee. And I think those check-ins are really important because it helps close the feedback loop and shows respect for the contributions of the patient partners who work with us. So you might be wondering what all the impact of all of this work is to make sure that patient partners are included in this funding system. And some of the impacts I think are measurable. Some of them are a little harder, a little less tangible. But what we do know for sure is that patients are really valuing the learning that they get to do as part of being involved with us, whether it's on our patient partner committee or doing peer review or other activities. They really just like the opportunity to learn about healthcare research. And they also like the opportunity to share their lived experience and their expertise in a way that can have an impact and contribute to something better. We also know through time that our funded projects better reflect the needs and priorities of patients because they've actually told us about what they've wanted to see researched. And then finally, the sort of less tangible, easy to measure thing that I think we're seeing is greater transparency and accountability in science, because we are breaking down some of those barriers for people outside of the ivory tower and having academic credentials and all of those things that we usually associate with science. We're making it easier for people who have lived expertise that's incredibly valuable. We're making it easier for them to contribute that to research in a way that meaningfully improves research and that they get something out of that as well. So with that, I'll thank you for your attention and the opportunity to share today and take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Banfield, for your really insightful presentation on how to include people who are often most impacted by our research within all stages of the research process. While we wait for questions to trickle in, I was wondering if you have any advice for scientists on how to engage often what is perceived to be vulnerable populations in a way that's not tokenizing them and in a way that's sensitive to their experiences.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think academic researchers are often hesitant because they haven't had to do this kind of work before. So there's actually some great resources out there now. My colleagues at the Institute of Musculoskeletal Health and Arthritis, which is part of CIHR as well, have a great set of training modules on how to even start thinking about doing patient partnership work. So I would say dipping into some of those resources that exist just to get people to think about things they haven't even thought that they have to think about yet is a great first step.
As a follow-up to that, how do the ethical considerations differ? So I work in bioinformatics, and the ethics seems to be very different if you are interacting directly with patients versus if you are simply using their data that comes from patients. Can you speak more to that process?
Yeah, we could probably speak about that for a while. I think it's a bit of a gray area at this moment because patient partnership is new enough that, for example, research ethics boards really aren't sure how patient partners fit into the whole research ecosystem that they're used to dealing with, you know, a principal investigator collecting data from patients. So I think right now, I would say there's a gap in the sort of ethical understanding of how patient partners need to be protected, not a paternalistic way, but in terms of protecting their privacy as well as their perhaps vulnerabilities in this space, because there is, of course, a power differential when you're bringing in community members into sort of an academic space, and they're not sort of covered in the same way that, you know, an academic who's employed might be, and they're not covered in the same way that research participants are protected by research ethics standards. So I don't have a great answer for that. I think there are a lot of ethical considerations that we haven't really solved yet.
Yeah, and I guess we'll just see what happens as the field evolves.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question in the chat. How is data governed using patient partners?
I'm not entirely clear on the question. I don't know if we can get clarification.
Who owns the data?
That's also a great question, because again, with bringing in patient partners, sometimes they will get sort of honorary sort of appointments at institutions so that they sort of are part of an institution. But in many cases, like we were just speaking about with ethics, there's a bit of a gray area there in terms of if there's a patient partner on a research team, what sort of data do they have access to, and what's appropriate from a research ethics standpoint. So I would say another unanswered question right now.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see more and more people take interest in this field, but it's also really interesting to see the questions that inevitably pop up. So thank you so much for offering us some clarity on this issue. And thank you again for your presentation.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Sivagari Lewis. Sivagari is a passionate advocate for applied research and currently serves as the Dean of Applied Research and Innovation at Northwestern Polytechnic. Welcome, Sivagari.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you for the introduction. So what I've been doing this year is doing some advocacy work around applied research, and there's often about misconception and understanding. I've been in the research enterprise ecosystem for over 16 years in the fundamental and basic side, and then 2 years on the applied research. So I felt there's a need and an opportunity to share the stories and understanding of what applied research is in the colleges and polytechnic institutes. Canada's ongoing challenges with the innovation and productivity sets us behind our peers. Our prevailing narrative is that while the country boasts a strong research foundation, it struggles to convert ideas into tangible, economical, and societal outcomes. Despite significant public investments in R&D by the Canadian government, the impact of this spending has been limited in terms of addressing real-world problems. Canada is grappling with a range of urgent national issues such as transitioning to net zero emission, slow adoption of productivity and technologies, enhancing manufacturing, and aging population. Applied research can play a pivotal role in the innovation ecosystem by creating new models that facilitate translation of Canada's research expertise into measurable economic impact. My short talk today unpacks how applied research collaborates with industry and advances economic development and empowers and trains the future workforce. There we go. Canada's colleges and polytechnics specialize in industry-partnered, problem-driven research that works at the speed of business to de-risk technology development, to mobilize greater technology
Siva
adoption.
Gowrie, apologies.
Yeah.
We can't see your slides if you are sharing slides.
Oh, I'm not sharing slides.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Speed of de-risking technology development, mobilize greater technology adoption, adaptation, and integration. Our unique partnerships have allowed our researchers and industry professionals to combine their knowledge, insights, leading to rapid prototyping, commercialization of new technology. This is not only results in cutting-edge product, but it also enhances the competitiveness of business in the global marketplace. Our institutions are addressing real-world challenges. When industry collaborates with research institutions, they create a powerful synergy. These partnerships leverage academic expertise, resources, allowing for the deployment of practical solutions that can swiftly be implemented in the market. The industry partner is usually near the institutions. So for example, in Northern Alberta, our main industry partners are from energy, agriculture, and healthcare. Our industry partners are often pay for fee for services for the expertise that we provide. Moreover, these partnerships play a crucial role in job creation. As new innovations emerge, they often lead to establishments of startups and the expansion of existing companies, generating highly skilled jobs that contribute to the economic growth. Additionally, applied research partnerships can address pressing societal challenges from healthcare advancement to sustainable practices. By aligning our research goals with industry needs, we need to develop solutions that not only boost the profitability, but also promote social good. So I'm going to give you guys some data from CICAN. So CICAN is our equivalent to University of Canada or U15. So they collected some data to look at what applied research activity and what our footprint is. So in the 2021 and 2022 data set, Polytechnic Institutes leveraged $151 million in federal investment, which translate into $433 million in research activity. It supported 8,000 applied research projects across the country, resulting in 6,500 new prototypes, products, services, and processes. However, one of the challenges in applied research is that we only have 2.9% of tri-agency funding available to what we do. Most of our investment outside of tri-agency comes from industry partnerships. In terms for our students, there is a lot of work integrated learning opportunities for our students. During the 2021-2022, it was during COVID, so there were 27,000 students who worked on applied research projects. The previous years, we had over 42,000 kids involved in applied research projects. So they're getting hands-on experience through the lab and the projects that they're working on. So it's a great experience for the students and folks that are part of the projects. The other important thing to note is that we partner with SMEs. So majority of our projects, 62% in that year were SMEs. The 13.2 is in the private sector, which is large enterprises. Often government utilizes our services as well. And then not-for-profit agencies, because we do a lot of projects in social innovation. And then we have a smaller engagement in the international side, but mostly focused on Canadian projects. In terms of sectoral focus, 42.9% is in manufacturing, other than food and beverage. 16.4 is in professional scientific services and social innovation. 15.7 is in agriculture, and 6.6 is in information cultural industries, 6.0% in trade and transportation and construction. So these are some of the sectors. The other unique thing about applied research is our IP policy. So one of the reasons we're successful in these industry collaboration is that our intellectual property practices are industry friendly, which grant our industry partner ownership on also royalty-free commercial rights to applied research results. This means we often give away IP. In some cases, we are listed as an inventor. If intellectual property protection is required, this would be undertaken particularly from our client, which would be the industry. Our institutions will typically retain rights for further research and educational purposes. 62% of our partnerships are Canadian SMEs, and they do keep the IP that is generated. So that is very different from fundamental and basic research. There are many advantages, but one significant advantage of sharing IP is researchers open access to their findings. They enable others to build upon their work. These collaborative spirit can lead to faster development of solution and diverse perspectives, and expertise come together to tackle a complex problem. Moreover, giving away IP can enhance the reputation of the researcher and the institution. When organizations demonstrate a commitment to sharing their knowledge, they often find themselves at the center of innovation networks, leading to new opportunities. In conclusion, while traditional views of IP focuses on protection and exclusivity, sharing intellectual property and applied research can foster collaboration, accelerate innovation, and enhance reputation. So that is another unique piece of our ecosystem. Another pillar of applied research is we support technology readiness levels from 4 to 8. And so we provide, we bridge the gap between theoretical concepts and practical application. And so TRL 4 to 8 is the area we support. So validation concepts. So applied research helps to validate the technology in a lab setting, ensuring prototype functions are intended. Then we do real world testing. So that would be TRL 5 to 6. Applied research facilitates testing in a relevant operational environment, allowing for adjustments based on real-world conditions, and integration and feedback, which is TRL 7 and 8. Applied research supports the integration of technology into operational settings and gathering feedback, and that informs refinement and ensures that it's ready for market launch. By focusing on practical application, applied research accelerates the transition from prototyping to fully operational system, fostering innovation, enhancing economic growth. Overall, applied research is essential for advancing technologies of industry partners through the TRL framework, ensuring they are robust, reliable, ready for deployment. So now I'd like to give you guys an example of applied research activities at NWP. That's where I work. Northwestern Polytechnic is located in northern Alberta. Applied research plays a vital role in addressing the unique challenges faced by rural communities. By focusing on more practical and local solutions for our industry, it helps us improve the quality of life, foster economic development in our region, and enhance essential services. In agriculture, applied research helps to develop sustainable farming practices, improving crop yields, integration technology to support local farmers. In rural healthcare access, applied research provides local solutions on enhancing healthcare delivery, including telemedicine, mobile clinics, and other community health initiatives. Finally, applied research fosters economic development by exploring strategies for diversifying local economies, supporting small businesses, and creating job opportunities tailored to the community's strengths. There are many unique features of applied research, but in our ecosystem, it is about community engagement and tailored solutions. Each of our projects are connected to local stakeholders by ensuring projects address real needs, leverage community knowledge, provide solutions based on local resources. The tailored solutions for our industry leads to customized strategies that resonate specific to cultural and economic social contexts of rural areas. To summarize, driving positive change in rural communities, enabling them to thrive in an ever-evolving landscape. So applied research is very different in an urban area versus a rural community. So that's what I'd like to highlight. The other unique feature is that most applied research institutions have a technology access center. For those of you who don't know what a technology access center is, we have 67 of them in the country. In Alberta, we have 7 of them. They advance applied research and innovation facilities. So this is like state-of-the-art technology equipment, a multidisciplinary team of experts who help transform innovative ideas into market-ready products. TACs provide valuable R&D, innovation services, especially for small and medium-sized enterprise within Canada, assisting in prototyping, processing, scaling, addressing specific business challenges that companies are having. They also tailor training to enhance technical skills, reduce financial risk associated with new equipment and technology. Ultimately, the TACs aim to drive innovation and productivity by boosting and competitiveness for our industry partners. So for us, we have a technology access center, and over the past decade, it's the National Bee Diagnostic Center located in Beaver Lodge, has established itself as a leader in providing comprehensive diagnostic services to support research, meet the needs of government, private industry, and academia. NBDC has trained many graduate students, undergraduate students in molecular biology techniques, enabling collaborative research to conduct large-scale experiments with timely, high-quality diagnostic services that their labs would otherwise lack. So it also has been recognized as a flagship for cutting-edge testing for beekeeping industry. So NBDC offers specialized molecular diagnostic bee diseases, parasite pests, using protocols aligned with accredited laboratories in the EU and the US. Notably, from 2014 to 2017, NBDC conducted a honeybee health surveillance in Canada. It's the first comprehensive national survey for honeybee pests and diseases. And this is essential data for science-based risk assessment impacting Canada's trades policy to this day. Another unique project that we have worked on is, it also looks at, we do a lot of work around genomics funded projects. So one of the ones we did is Beeonomics and BCSI, contributing to molecular diagnostics to detect pathogens, pests, which support the development of selective breeding markers. These initiatives position NBDC as a key provider of innovative technology and enabling real-time hive diagnostics for beekeepers as a unique service to this industry. So currently, we have a project funded by Prairie Can, and it's based on the demand of commercial beekeepers who are in the process of developing a sugar botanical testing services with the hope to increase the sales of Canadian honey in the national and international market. The testing will not only be looking at the quality, but also identify the plant components in the honey that may have additional health benefits. Believe it or not, honey is one of the most fraudulent products, ag products in the market. So fraudulent honey impacts beekeeping in Canada by driving honey prices down and adding issues to already faced by the industry. The testing will also monitor fraudulent product that enters the Canadian market, but also reputation of Canadian honey worldwide. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share the contributions from our sector, from business innovation, de-risking, supporting TRL 4 to 8. We really believe that we can maximize the impact of research investment, ensure the returns on research benefits to Canadian industry and its citizens. Addressing the complex challenges facing the innovation ecosystem, we need to reimagine how all post-secondaries contribute to the innovation ecosystem. Historically, the research enterprise has been committed to funding fundamental and basic research, but it is time to invest in applied research where the return on investment is high and Canadians can see the tangible results. Dedicated, stable investment will accelerate the innovation through economic growth and train the future workforce. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer anyone's questions.
Thank you, Siwagari, for your wonderful presentation. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now, and I think for the sake of time, we'll be moving on to our next speaker. But if we have time at the end, we will be bringing all of the speakers back onto the stage, and then you'll have a chance to ask your questions then. So our last but not least, our speaker is Amoy Jack. Amoy is Program Manager at the Collaborative Critical Research for Equity and Transformation in Health Lab at the University of Ottawa. Welcome, Amoy.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can everyone see my screen?
Your presentation is still loading.
Oh. I can see it on my end, so you can't see it on yours?
I can see your screen, but it's not in presentation mode.
Okay. Sorry, just bear with me one moment.
Do you want to stop sharing and try again? Oh, we see presenter view.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it in presenter mode. Sorry about that. Let me just try this one more time. How about now? Can you see the screen?
I can see the screen, but it's not showing up as in presentation mode.
Okay, I will just email my slides to Katerina and you can share it on my behalf. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
While we're waiting, does anyone in the audience have any questions for any speakers so far?
Sure, I'll send it to Trudy now.
Perfect. Actually, do you want to just get started and then just have your slides however you have them, and then while we wait for Trudy or Katerina to share?
Sure, I can do that. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. I will be presenting on the transforming health research, the role of data governance for health research partnerships in inclusive innovation for African Caribbean communities in Canada. As was stated earlier, I'm from the Co-Create lab here at the University of Ottawa. And part of our research team, we look at the health inequities and disparities that face African, Caribbean, and Black Canadians across Canada and beyond. And so I work with an esteemed team of researchers, trainees, and stakeholders from multiple community partnerships. Next slide, please. So throughout our talk today, we've been really talking about how data shapes our world and shapes our realities. And so in the lab, we're currently looking at how do we provide a better framework for data governance, especially when we're dealing with the health inequities that ACB populations face across Canada. So I'll be sharing best practices for race-based data collection for this population, for ACB populations, and how these practices can be used nationwide. Next slide. So I think it's important for us to understand how these health disparities impact ACB populations, particularly in high-income countries. We tend to have alarming rates of health outcomes despite positive health behaviors, poor health outcomes, and socioeconomic disadvantages are often due to systemic barriers or challenges within anti-Black racism. And so when we are looking at our data and how that is collected and analyzed and even beyond, we need to understand how anti-Black racism operates from its historical roots. So from slavery down to colonization and how this intersects with other forms of discrimination, sexism, classism, and xenophobia. And so there is a widespread acknowledgement within ACB communities as well as among scholars that we need to be involved in addressing these health issues from these lenses. As well, with the pandemic, it has revealed that data governance and ownership is becoming a more central issue within health research. And so we do need better data governance that will allow for the transition of data into targeted interventions. Next slide. And so one of the things that we're looking at in the lab is really to learn from the work that has been done by our First Nations scholars with respect to the ownership, control, access, and possession, or OCAP tool. And so historically, this tool has been developed by First Nation communities that have had problematic relationships with researchers, academics, and data collectors on how their information has been collected, shared, and maintained. And so the OCAP tool allows us to fully understand some of these issues in more detail. It's also a tool that is being used for self-determination in research. As well as to support First Nations data sovereignty and how information should be used, collected, and shared to preserve and protect culture, development, and their well-being. Next slide. And so during the pandemic, there was immense outcry among Black scholars as well as the ACB community on how COVID-19 impacted a lot of Black communities across Canada. And so there was a immediate shift to really address this issue by understanding how our data is actually governed. So when I say data governance, I'm looking at who owns the data, who has access, how is it being shared, and once it is being shared, how is it being utilized to help and enable communities to have better resilience, better agency, and improve their overall well-being. And so the EGAP, which is the Engagement, Governance, Access, and Protection framework, was inspired by the OCAP tool. And it's really a framework that is to address systemic racism as well as advancing health equity. It has 4 key areas around commitment, governance, access, and protection. And it's a tool that is being used across multiple sectors within research, within healthcare agencies and community health centers to ensure and envision that Black communities gain control over their collective data through community governance tables. So inviting the communities, ACB communities, to be part of the research process from start to finish. And I was quite impressed with Dr. Jillian Banfield's presentation on partnership, patient partners, because I do believe that the community or the target population that we're studying, they hold a lot of the answers that we're looking for. And so in order for them to journey along with us, we have to ensure that their data is being utilized in a way that brings humanity and brings overall wellness to their overall health and well-being. Next slide. So some of the challenges that we have with our current data governance practices within Canada, it's quite varied, and this slide kind of truncates it down to there are some systemic issues. I referenced earlier that there has been historical data extraction that have not led to improved health outcomes. And so there's a lot of mistrust as a result of data that's being extrapolated from ACB communities and not leading to anything worthwhile, often is produces stigmatizing and stereotyping information that ultimately harms us as opposed to helping us. Also, the improper use of race-based data perpetuates these sorts of stigmas of ACB communities and blaming us for problems that are actually rooted in structural anti-Black racism as opposed to getting to the heart of the issue. From an institutional perspective, there's been ineffective use of data that doesn't translate into meaningful interventions, as I mentioned. There's a lack of identifying what these health inequities are within institutions. And if we don't identify these, then we can't actually address the problem or create any sustainable interventions or solutions around these health inequities. And so ACB researchers more commonly now are being used as partners through the decision-making process to address our concerns, as well as distrust, complex research methods, and uncertainty among academic partners, and unclear partnership decision-making protocols makes it very challenging for ACB community members to understand the processes that occur in research, and prevents them from even wanting to engage in the process. Next slide. And so some of the challenges that continue to exist with our community members are how is the data being used? So, when they do come to the table, when we're engaging them, when we're on a research project, when we're trying to tackle a health inequity issue, that is one of the first questions that comes up. How is it going to be utilized? How will they have access? Who will be the ones collecting the data? And will it be in a language that they can actually understand? Next slide. And so I would like to propose just some best practices for data governance within ACB communities that we are currently adopting into our research project, as well as what the literature says. So as I mentioned, post-pandemic, post-COVID-19 pandemic have centered data governance among racialized communities at the forefront of research enterprises. And so some of the best practices have been shared in a variety of research literature, notably the United Kingdom research study into ethnicity and COVID-19 outcomes in healthcare workers, or the UK REACH study stated that data should be gathered appropriately and looking at the sensitivity around the data, particularly ethnicity data should be categorized across sectors and systems, and we really have to be mindful as to how we define ethnicity and how each group wants how each group wants that data to be collected and shared. Community engagement is a huge piece of best practices that should involve co-creation, co-production of research design, knowledge sharing, and capacity building, as well as a smart and effective regulation on appropriate use of data, particularly for private sectors. Next slide. Some other scholars recommend that there needs to be an established data infrastructure for community-based data where clear outcomes are identified, foster transparent and mutual benefit relationships among researchers and community partners and institutions, establish clear guidelines for data sharing that benefits the community, as well as utilizing an equity lens for the data lifecycle. So we really want to understand, again, that access piece and who has control over the data, who will be held accountable for storing the data, as well as sharing the data, and what will be the reporting mechanisms. How will people be able to access the data that is being shared? Was it going to be through a report or a community talk? These are key pieces that needs to be transparent from the very beginning. As well as improving policies that will dismantle anti-Black racism by identifying ACB health inequities and monitoring their interventions and how this impacts their overall health outcomes. Next slide. And so one of the key pieces that we're working on within our lab right now, we've got a specific project that is looking to expand or advance the EGAP framework, which, as I mentioned, is currently being used in different spaces, whether it's in research or healthcare, but it's used in a very siloed way. And so we're working to really expand and advance this very innovative work into a national race-based data framework that will allow us to have some concrete guidelines and tools and steps as to how we can collect race-based data within Canada, within multiple sectors. Also, there needs to be research guidelines as to how knowledge mobilization frameworks actually work, as well as how do we mobilize our communities to share the information that we create from our research findings, as well as what are the necessary and innovative approaches around disseminating information, particularly from our research studies that can impact both our academic and community partners. So I will end there with my presentation, and if anyone has any questions, I'll take questions now.
Thank you so much, Amoy, for highlighting some very important pieces of community engagement. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now. Oh, I see one. What is the timeline on the expansion of the framework?
Oh, that's a great question. So we're currently working on providing this framework by 2026. We're currently working on two specific surveys. One is an organizational survey that is looking at how are research partnerships created, who has access to, on a leadership scale, who has access to research data and how is it being used. And we also have an individual survey that looks at how people understand health research and community partnerships and how these two pieces work together. We're also, and in addition to that, we are collaborating with a variety of stakeholders, some of which will be First Nations who have created the OCAT tool to see how we can expand the EGAP model.
Thank you so much. At this point in the session, I would like to wrap things up by, first of all, thanking all of our wonderful speakers for taking the time to share their knowledge and work with us today. I would also like to thank all of the attendees who've participated and listened in this session. I encourage you to stay tuned for future pre-conference events and check out the CSPC website and social media for more details. A short poll has been launched for feedback, so please fill that out before exiting the session. Thank you and have a wonderful day.